Welcome back, scoundrels, to Weird Wolf Unchained, where we talk about horror movies and stuff, horror-related. I'm Bran.
I'm Lynne.
And today in Movie vs. Book, we're doing The Invisible Man.
By H.G. Wells.
I chose to do the 1933 version movie because it seemed like it would be the closest to, not necessarily just because it's the closest to, but I think that the newer interpretations, Hollow Man and the most recent one in 2020, stray too far from the book, which kind of undermines the purpose of this, which is to see if people can have a conversation. So we're going to do this backwards from when we did Hellraiser and the Hellbound Heart. And we'll do the interview first and then the summary and see how we like this one, this format, and we'll pick the better way to go in the future.
Yes.
So give me your synopsis on your book there so people know what we're talking about.
It seemed very simple, said the voice. I'm an invisible man. With his face swaddled in bandages, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses, and his hands covered even indoors, Griffin, the new guest at the Coach and Horses, is at first assumed to be a shy accident victim, but the true reason for his disguise is far more chilling. He has developed a process that has made him invisible, and it is locked in a struggle to discover the antidote. Forced him from the village and driven to murder, he seeks the aid of his old friend Kemp. The horror of his fate has affected his mind, however, and when Kemp refuses to help, he resolves to wreak his revenge.
Nice. So that's the book. Movie synopsis. While researching a new drug, Dr. Jack Griffin stumbles upon a potion that can make him invisible. When he reveals his new ability to his old mentor and his fiancée, it is clear that the side effects of the potion is insanity. Jack goes on a violent rampage and the police struggle to hunt him down, unable to see their target, while his mentor and his former partner desperately try to devise a plan to capture him. Your face says that there's some grave difference there.
I said I wasn't sure how this one was going to work.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. And just because I chose the original 1933 version doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be more accurate to the book. It just, I felt that it, again, strayed the least amount. Like, the 2020 version is not even close to what the book is about. So there would be no opportunity to have a conversation there. And especially with some of this really old stuff, it might be kind of difficult too.
So let's give this a try.
All right. Interview time! Questions. So, overall story impressions.
Overall story, I thought it was boring. It had some interesting points, but overall, just bland, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought mine was a pretty interesting concept. If you took this and redid it today, like almost the exact same story, just, our better ability to tell story through film, much better acting. And if you could copy the effects from this movie, you could have a pretty darn good, thrilling, and scary movie. Like, I know I've talked about the 2020 version, and it's been a while since I watched Hollow Man, but like some of the real intense moments of the 2020 version could definitely be even more terrifying with this version. No.
Just the first 2/3 of the book were just mind-numbingly boring.
Overall, what about the plot overall, though? Is it an interesting story idea?
It is an interesting concept, yes. It's an interesting idea. I think it's something that's going to prove to be done better in the movie, but it could have been done better in the book. Yeah.
And you're dealing with H.G. Wells, too, who does not shy away from social commentary in his stories and political commentary.
I suppose books that are over 100 years old are allowed to be a little slower.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that makes this interesting too, is we're dealing with minds approaching 100 years. What, 90 some, 80, 87 years? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't do math.
It's close to 100. I don't do math right now. Yeah, definitely didn't get very much social or political commentary in the movie version. I don't know. I don't think that was really a big thing back then, because movies were mostly just for entertainment value. Oh, if you're gonna do math, I'll do math. Do you think?
Well, I felt like my math was off, and it might have been closer to pushing 200 years old, the book, and it's 123 years old.
Do you think the concept was executed well?
Again, it's one of those things where I don't. It spends
That was right on.
so long setting it up.
Yeah.
Which I guess it needs to do, and it's a short story.
Well, and I would venture to guess it's probably supposed to be more about his madness than it is the effects on the outside world.
It is. He's just an angry man yelling at people.
Which mine is more his effects on the outside world. They do demonstrate him being aggressive and potentially more insane, but you don't see his character beforehand.
Well,
Griffin, that is.
Because it's the first 2/3 it's the people in the village reacting to him, and he does have violent outbursts, but you don't really get inside his head to the craziness therein.
Yeah.
Until the last third.
Oh.
Which is when it gets good.
Interesting.
If I didn't have to read it, I wouldn't have finished it.
You would have stopped right before it got good. I don't know. I think the execution of the movie wasn't too terribly bad for what they were going for. Like I said, some of the acting was a little 1933. Just we forgot to talk about the characters. Oh well. Most of the characters have names, but they don't really use their names until the character's already well established. So I just use them as they are. So like the wife of the innkeeper, her acting is just, when you think of a hysterical woman in a very cartoonish manner, that's what you get. But again, for what they were going for, it picks up with him getting to the inn, and he's working on his experiments. He has outbursts at people. Then he has to run away. And then, like, it's a very fast-moving movie. Like, it does not really feel like 70 minutes or whatever it is, 71 minutes. Did you have a favorite part in this book?
My favorite part. I think my favorite part would have to be when he's having his conversation with his former schoolmate Kemp when he stumbles upon his house by accident. And he thinks he's finally found his compatriot to help him pull off his reign of terror that he feels is the only thing he can do, being an invisible man. He has no choice. It's his destiny.
Griffin or...
Yeah, Griffin. And Kemp is playing along with it while also keeping an eye out the window for the people to come take him away because he's mad. But I really like the internal monologue of Kemp's talking about his madness. His selfishness and thinking only of his own advantage. Because I think that's what sets up what actually makes the Invisible Man scary.
Yeah. Which, might talk about that a little bit more in the summary part. Maybe. Or maybe at the end of this. Like themes and stuff.
Maybe,
because it's hard to do. Like I said, from the movie, they're not really present.
So what was your favorite part?
Probably have to do his montage of mayhem.
Montage of mayhem?
Yes. Because it just enough of a scene to show you what he's done or to give you an idea of what he's doing. And just, like I said, this is a very quickly paced movie. It's just bam, 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 bam. But it's not so quick that there isn't story and that there isn't, something there to tell you, or that it's missing enough of the story to tell you what's going on. There's a lot of exposition though. But he throws a couple people off of a cliff, he kills the controlman for the train and changes the tracks, and
wow.
he takes a tiller drawer out of the bank and just starts throwing money around. Like I said, like, if you redid this movie, like, almost beat for beat, but told it with our capability now and what movies are for us now, this would be a really good movie.
I also liked that I think he's actually killing more people than he realizes he's killing, because he simply doesn't care to look back to see if he's killed them.
Interesting. True sociopath. I want to kill you, but I don't care enough to make sure you're dead.
Well, it's not even that. It's like, it's immaterial. He burned down a house, and he doesn't care or even think about the people who lived there again, because he had to hide the evidence that he was there.
Yeah. Which goes to what you were saying, that it doesn't matter. It's just about him.
He tied a man up inside a bag and then just left him there. A man who lived alone, so there's no possibility that someone might come and check on him, and just left him there and never thought about it again until Kemp asked, well, is he okay? I don't know. Because he never thought about it again, because it was immaterial.
That's a good way to illustrate his madness, too. Favorite character?
I'll have to go with Kemp, because he's the only sane one, I guess. Yeah, probably Kemp, because he's the only sane and calm thinking one. All the villagers are, typical uneducated villagers.
Background NPCs. I'm going to have to go with Science Dad, Flora's father. Like I said, most of the characters aren't named until well into it. I was already calling him Science Dad, making my notes. If I wanted to, I could have wrote his name down and remembered it, but that's just how unimportant he is. He's just there as an exposition dump and to explain things. So he doesn't actually bring anything. I mean, Flora is your typical, oh, I can change him, I'm his woman, and I'll do the things. Just let me talk to him. Nothing special there, just... I said favorite character, right?
Yeah.
Whoops. I meant least favorite character there. For me, I got backwards.
Least favorite? I mean, it's going to be Griffin, and I mean, not because he's a badly written character. I don't like him. Yeah. But I'm not supposed to like him. He's a crazy man.
Why'd you take the easy road?
He's a scary, crazy man. But if I'm not taking the easy way and taking the character you're not supposed to like, it would probably be Marvel. I don't know.
I don't know who that is.
No, he's not bad. Marvel's the tramp, who he gets to go back into the village after he's chased off to go get his books, and then steals them and runs away, so he has to chase him down and ends up in a new village. Marvel,
yeah, my story is a lot
tramp.
more simplified. I'm sure Marvel's in mine somewhere. He's not named, and he doesn't serve a purpose other than to probably die. Maybe
Mr. Hill, because he doesn't take his wife into hand and say, no, you've got a crazy guy living here, throw him out. The innkeeper's husband. The innkeeper is the woman. The wife owns the inn. He does not, and that's why she keeps letting him stay there, even though he says, woman, get him out. He's crazy. Oh. She says, but he's paying.
Roles are reversed in the movie. And he's not paying in the movie. No, my favorite character would probably be Griffin, just because he's the only one that actually brings something.
Did you just take the easy way out?
No.
Oh,
yes. There's not a whole lot to go with.
There's really not.
Especially, like I said, in the movie, most of them are just they're just there to do exactly what they do, and there's no real depth or anything to the character.
They're there to react.
Yeah. Kemp's just this wishy-washy guy who's pining after Griffin's fiance, kinda.
No, he's not. He uses himself as bait and then fights back.
No.
Yes. That's why he's my favorite character.
Not mine.
He puts himself at great risk to even summon the constabulary to come to his house to get him. And then continues to use himself as bait.
Yeah. No, my Kemp doesn't.
Yeah.
What was your least favorite part?
My least favorite part is how they make a point to demonstrate that even though that the dogs can still scent him, and they he kind of keeps forgetting it at certain points. Like, the town is eventually overrun with bloodhounds because Kemp says get bloodhounds, they can scent him. And he still manages to spend an entire day in the village finding food and sleeping without these hounds finding him. It's inconsistent work with the dogs when they appear.
Yeah.
And when they're actually being useful.
Plot convenience.
Yeah, they
That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Plot convenience.
They kind of actually have no impact on the story because they don't even run him down in the end.
See, that would be an interesting part to add to the movie.
Because, they actually play no part. You could take the dogs completely out, and it would not change a single aspect. And I don't like that. So what was your least favorite part?
Probably most of the inn-related stuff, just because of the innkeeper's wife, Mrs. Hill. She's just there to scream, and she does it very comedically. And, I mean, that's fine to a degree, but it's kind of really the only comedic part of the movie. And just kind of like with the dogs, how some things play out. Like, when he attacks Mr. Hill in the movie, and Mr. Hill falls down the stairs, and his wife screams for the police, and the police show up, and they go upstairs, and he reveals that he's an invisible man, and everybody freaks out and runs back downstairs. And then the cop's like, oh, he's invisible, I guess we better go get him before he takes off all his clothes and goes away, and then runs back upstairs. Like, I understand you're freaked out, but at the same time, why would you run downstairs? It's so stupid. But it was also a very comedic part. Like, that's where most of the comedy happens, is in the very, first half hour, maybe.
Yeah.
I suppose we kind of covered it a little bit. Did you find this story interesting?
Well, in spite of the fact that I said it was boring, yes. Not the actual writing and the story itself, but the ideas and the themes are interesting.
Yeah.
The concepts of the invisible man being, when he's in his state of invisibility, which makes him the most at risk to everyone else, it also makes him the most vulnerable himself because he's naked, which isn't just vulnerable from the elements, but it puts us in a mental state of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I kind of feel for him too, because you can kind of see what leads him to it, because he's kind of isolated from the beginning, because he's this weird looking albino dude, and he's got to be secretive from his team, because when you work with a team in science, the higher up scientist will get the credit for it, so he's trying to be secretive with his work, and it kind of makes him into this reclusive, weird guy.
Paranoid, kinda.
Yes, and you can see where it builds to this brutality that he eventually descends into.
Yeah, that's definitely something, too, that would make this story a lot more interesting, especially from the movie aspect. Because, again, it picks up with him already being invisible, and you don't see his descent into madness. You get this, him acting out, and then we cut back to... Or is it the other way? I don't think you really get a whole lot. He's just kind of curt and a little off-putting at first. And then, he changed and he was very different in those last few days before he ran away. And then you cut back and then you see him mad, and it's just the telling instead of showing kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, the book also starts, in the inn. You don't get the info dump until his monologue to Kemp at the end, where you learn all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You don't see the descent until the end. It all just comes very rapidly at the end.
Yeah, and this is sprinkled out throughout, too. In the movie, it's just comes from Science Dad because he's exposition dumping. and information dumping, and you don't see his descent at all. You're just told that he went mad. And then, 1930s version of a man being insane. As I've said it quite a few times, there is a lot of really interesting stuff could be done in a way. The movie didn't really say anything about anything. It was just a man's turned invisible and is terrorizing people. There's not a lot of depth to be read there as far as like invisible enemies or anything kind of like we briefly talked about on our own.
Yeah, 'cause he's not even actively terrorizing until they run him out. He's trying to find a cure up until they run him out.
Yeah. Mine definitely has the intention to still terrorize. He just wants to find a cure so that way it can be undone, so he can go in and out.
He's definitely volatile, and I think the being run out is just it's the final straw that pushed him toward, you know what, fine. If this is how you want it, I'll be the monster.
Kind of like a Frankenstein situation.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a great person beforehand, don't get me wrong. He's still very ragey, outbursty. But I don't think he thinks that he needs to do this reign of terror until he's driven out.
Probably know the answer to this. Would you read it again?
No.
I would watch this again. I've already watched it twice. So watch it one time to end the story, even though I kind of didn't. And then I watched it again to take notes. And then I'm going to watch it with your children. So that would be the next one we cover with your children. So you're going to get a lot of this one. But yeah, I'd watch it again. I definitely want to go back and watch at least Hollow Man. Because there's not actually a lot of interpretations of this. Most of the movies associated to the Invisible Man are sequels to this one. So that's the other thing that made it difficult which one to pick. In the future, I think what I'll do is highest rated on Rotten Tomatoes by audience score, because critics are paid and stupid.
I do like that even the book leaves it open to do a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tramp who stole his books, Marvel, he has them. The ones that have his secret recipe for invisibility in them, and he can't understand them. But he still has them, and it makes a point that he saved them and kept preserving them so that this recipe for invisibility could be potentially found by someone else in the future.
So, is his madness a product of his chemical compound, or is it from being invisible? Would you say?
I think he was predisposed to the madness, as I said earlier, because of his reclusiveness and possibly the way he was treated by being a weird albino man in that time period, and also being poor and under other scientists. It predisposed him to this volatile nature. And I don't necessarily think the process that made him invisible was his madness. I think it was the actual being invisible that led to it. Because when he's first invisible, and when he's telling the story to Kemp, he's just excited for all these things that being invisible brings, all the benefits, until the moment he steps out on the road and he's nearly run over and pushed in front of a cart that would have run him over, and he immediately starts seeing all the pitfalls.
Yeah.
And it's just a constant, tiring, exhausting struggle from that point until he gets to the point he is at the village trying to find the antidote.
The movie makes a very dedicated point that it is the chemicals, one of the chemicals within his compound. Because it's this chemical that comes from a plant. And it talked about how it was used to dye fabrics, but it ruined the cloth. And then they tested it on an animal, and it bleached the animal white, but it drove the animal mad. So then it is a direct result of the chemical.
That was an irritating thing about the process. The thing, too. He first tested it on a piece of wool, and it turned invisible. So why wouldn't you turn clothes invisible before you turned yourself invisible? Or all at once? or do clothes after you were naked and invisible, so you'd have invisible clothes to wear.
Something that just popped out to you?
I forgot about that, and it's just... But no, I think what made him...
Well, that's an interesting callback to the book, though.
I think what led to his the downfall was his... Not the process used to make him invisible, but the psychology of actually being invisible weighing down on him, the being ignored and forgotten and overlooked, because we all want to be seen. Humans need other people. They need companionship.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have that. I mean, he didn't in the first place.
Ooh, that's interesting.
He didn't really in the first place. He lived alone. But he at least interacted with his neighbors and the cat that he intested the invisibility on, and his landlord, but he doesn't interact with anybody for a time while he figures out how to be seen. And even with his bandages and stuff, he's still not really being seen. And I think the psychology of that is what leads to his crazy, not a chemical.
Different.
See? And that's why I think it's boring and interesting.
It's just, written in a different time period. If it was written today, it would probably explore those things a little bit more deeply. Anything in particular you would fix?
I would either not mention that we turn wool invisible, or I'd make invisible clothes. Leave the dogs out. They were pointless. Or use them.
Yeah.
Either way.
I'd just really update it for the storytelling capabilities. Probably include the dogs. I mean, like, the things that they do bring up, the things that they do mention, they mention them with the intention of using it. Because, there's a point where he lays out the rules of being invisible, that you can still see things at certain points, or if he goes out into certain environments, you'll be able to see him. And then it snows at the end, and you don't see the snow falling on him because that would be way too advanced for the time. But you do see him walking in the snow. And from 1933, it is a great effect, and I want to know how they did it. Because it's such a simple thing, but I suppose they could have had somebody up real high and just poking footprints down. But it's just... I mean, you can tell it's 1933. So it's footstep, like it's very cut and put together.
I liked the detail of the science of the invisibility, too.
And I would add either showing... I think it would be more fitting to show the slow descent for him in a more modern movie format than show him already being invisible and acting mad and then going back and showing it in a flashback or sprinkling it, just because it almost kind of takes away from it by the end a lot of times for me when you explain it, or explain it later on. Explain it beforehand because your brain has the opportunity to kind of forget it a little bit, or you understand but this is what's happening now, so it's still really scary, rather than showing him being a good guy before and then showing him being a monster now.
Yeah. Which I guess kind of makes sense for the slow beginning, fast ending of this. It is his slow descent into madness, after all. What else you got?
Did you find it scary at all?
The book itself, no. The concept of the Invisible Man, yes. Not just the concept of the Invisible Man. The concept of the crazy Invisible Man. The Invisible Man is scary, yes, but it is truly terrifying to have one with the mentality of Griffin.
Yeah.
It is truly terrifying. And his plan for the world is truly terrifying. Because he wants to control everything, and everything will be exactly as he wants it. And if it's not, you'll get a little note under your door. And if you don't fix it, whatever it is that his crazy mind wants you to fix, you're just gonna be dead at just any point.
You would probably not like the 2020 Invisible Man.
And it's just... It would come from nowhere, because it's the Invisible Man.
Because it's 2020 Invisible Man's not a man looking for world domination. He's abusive towards his wife. And it starts with her getting away from him. And he controls every little aspect of her life. And he knows every little thing that she's doing. But she does, because she's been cut off from people so long, she does have an avenue to escape to. And just the mind games that he plays with her.
The scary thing is that you would never be able to feel safe.
Yeah.
Because you would never know if he was there or not.
And that's probably more what it was about than actual scary moments.
Yes. That's what makes it scary, is that you would never be able to feel safe.
And that's what she's dealing with in the newer movie, is that even after he's dead, not feeling safe. It takes her like 2 weeks to be able to walk to the mailbox at the end of the drive.
Well, fortunately, for whatever reason, after they killed him, he becomes visible again.
Me too.
Not sure how that worked.
Yeah.
But
Whatever. We're also talking about a story where a man takes chemicals and turns invisible, so.
It was a machine.
Mine's chemicals.
I think there might be chemicals as part of it, but it's also a machine.
No, he's injecting chemicals. I mean, it's hard to say. 1930s scary is a lot different than scary today. So I didn't find it scary. There were parts that could have been really scary and done like the supernatural style scary part. Like when he's messing with the controller man.
Yeah.
Because he just opens the door, walks in, and smashes him over the head. But for 1933, that's all you needed. That was shocking enough.
No, this is definitely a more psychological kind of scare. And the book itself isn't scary. It's the idea of it.
A lot of the stuff from that time period really was, because that was also when H.P. Lovecraft was active. And his mostly deals with psychology and madness and dealing with unknown things. I guess we'll call that there. Do you have anything else you want to wrap up with on this part?
As far as being able to talk about this one, reading a book, watching a movie, we definitely, I don't think we're talking about the same thing. I don't think this one was a pass for that.
No. Which is part of the experiment of this. Anyways, so that was the interview portion of the Invisible Man movie and book review. Summary, comparison, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so come back for part 2, which will be the more in-depth summary of each of our things, kinda.
The more direct comparison.
There you go. Yeah. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next time. Toodles.